CPAC 2019.
And welcome back to America's Voice News. I'm Dave Sussman, your host, and delighted to still be here at CPAC 2019. It is just a lot of fun, a lot of incredible people, including my guest, Hans von Spakovsky with the Heritage Foundation. And Hans, you're talking today a little bit about voter integrity and the state of voter rolls around the country and the voter commission. Talk a little bit about what you're doing right now with the Heritage Foundation on this issue.
Well, for example, a couple of years ago, I kind of got tired of reading editorials in the New York Times and elsewhere saying, well, there's no voter fraud in the U.S. So we started a voter fraud database listing cases from across the country that we could find in which people were convicted in a court of law of committing fraud, or a court ordered a new election because of fraud. We're up to almost 1,200 cases from across the country, including one of the most recent ones we're about to add of a mayor in Gordon, Alabama, who was removed from office because he committed absentee ballot fraud in order to get elected. So that shows you that, you know, unfortunately, we have fraud in this country, and we need to take steps to try to deter it. So it won't happen, and when it does happen, detect it and prosecute it.
So when President Trump became president, one of the first acts that he implemented was a voter commission on integrity, right? And you were a member of this board. Talk about that. I understand it was disbanded due to the attorney generals in different states. What exactly happened with that?
Well, we wanted to do some basic research, so we asked various states to send us their voter registration records and voter history, so we could do things like, for example, find out, well, how many people are registered in more than one state and may have voted illegally in more than one state. We know that that's a potential problem. About a third of the states, mostly democratically controlled states, said, we're not sending you this information. Even though it's public information, candidates' parties get it all the time. We're not sending you this information. So, and then they also launched about a dozen lawsuits against the commission, trying to stop it from operating. You know, it makes you wonder, why did all these liberal groups, progressives, not want us simply researching this issue to try to find out what the problems are and what kind of vulnerabilities exist? Unfortunately, with them refusing to give us the data and filing lawsuits that took basically all the time of the staff, the commission was unable to operate, and the president unfortunately dissolved it.
So their justification was what? Logistics? It was just too cumbersome?
No, they claimed that we wanted this information so we could engage in voter suppression, which is ridiculous. All we were going to do was research the issue to try to find out how much of a problem there was.
They actually stated that.
Oh yeah, yeah, they did. I mean, it was it was just crazy. Look, it's just like,
it's totally partisan then.
It was, but look, it's very similar to how liberal groups are constantly saying, oh, voter ID is an effort to suppress votes, keep people out of the polls. Well, about a couple of weeks ago, another study was released that looked at 8 years worth of data that showed that voter ID does not keep people out of the polls.
Okay, I understand this is a one-case situation. The state of Nevada. The state of Nevada just went blue in 2016.
Right.
A lot of people believe that there's been a tremendous amount of inflow from California, and the voter rolls in Clark County's changed. President Trump lost the state by 25,000 votes. And we've had a couple of people that have joined us on the show that have talked about that state specifically, where there are a significant number of households that are voting hundreds of times. And the Attorney General in the state of Nevada has decided not to proceed in investigating this. There seems to be significant fraud. That's a one example situation of one state. Are you seeing this across the country?
Well, about a month ago, the state of Pennsylvania was forced to admit that they had found 11,000 non-citizens who had gotten registered on the voter rolls.
Okay.
Now, that may not sound like a lot, but in close elections all across the state, that might have been enough illegal votes to change outcomes. Virginia, 2 years ago, there was a report released showing that something like 5,500 non-citizens have been found on the voter rolls. Virginia is a state in which in the last dozen years we've had 2 statewide attorney general's races decided by less than 1,000 votes.
And what just took place in North Carolina?
The state election board there has ordered a new election, apparently based on the fact that there was what's called vote harvesting going on. Vote harvesting is illegal in North Carolina. California just legalized it. And vote harvesting allows people outside of your immediate family to deliver your absentee ballot to election officials. In places like California, party representatives, activists, people who work for candidates can pick up your absentee ballot and deliver it. That is asking for trouble, because people who have that kind of an interest in the outcome of election should not be handling ballots. They might change them. They might forge them. They might decide, oh, if they know that you're a member of the opposing party, we'll just not deliver that ballot. That's why many states ban this activity. It was going on in the North Carolina race, and the election board thought there were enough questions about some of these absentee ballots that they should have a new election.
So they're going to have a brand new election.
That's correct.
And does that serve one side or the other? Does it benefit one side or the other?
Well, the Republican who had initially won the election by about 900 votes has already announced he's dropping out. So it turns out that the Republican Party is going to have to find a new candidate.
Why? What was his?
Apparently health reasons. But the point is that apparently the individual who had been hired by the Republican campaign, who was, I think, accused of engaging in illegal vote harvesting, he had worked apparently for Democratic candidates in numerous prior elections, and no one before that had questioned his behavior.
Right. Hans, we got 2020. It's coming up like a steam train here on us already. Based upon some of the discrepancies that you saw in 2016, do you believe that some of these problems have been resolved for 2020? Or are you concerned?
No, a lot of the vulnerabilities that we have in what's basically an honor system are still there. I mean, just to give you one example, there's almost no procedures in any state that would prevent people who aren't U.S. citizens from registering and voting in elections, even though it's illegal for them to do so.
And you see that in certain states where immigration is at a higher level, or like California?
I think California in particular has a real problem with this, and election officials there have no interest in doing anything to prevent that problem.
Well, they don't have any interest, and they also don't have any. I mean, the Republicans and conservatives in that state no longer have a voice.
Right.
Meanwhile, there's a lot of questions about what took place in Orange County, which has traditionally been an extremely deep red county. It was the home of John Wayne and Ronald Reagan.
Right.
And now it's completely blue. 5 out of 5 congressional districts flipped. A lot of people say that there was some shenanigans there. Did you hear about this?
Yeah, and a lot of it had to do with absentee ballots that came in after the election. A lot of that was done through vote harvesting because California legalized that recently. And the key thing there is if the votes of absentee ballots were very different than the votes on election day, well, then you have a potential problem.
Okay. And what is Heritage Foundation doing with this issue? I know you're front and center here.
In addition to our database, I mean, we have done a lot of recommendations to both Congress and to state legislatures on how to change their laws, their rules, and their regulations to put in a more secure system. And we work on that all the time.
Okay, but the state legislature has to be motivated and want to do that. So
that's correct.
If you have a state where there's literally zero inclination to want to help you, such as California,
right?
What happens? What are some of the alternatives that you have?
Well, one of the alternatives is to sue them under particular federal laws, and a good example of this is Judicial Watch sued Los Angeles.
Yeah.
Why? Because Los Angeles wasn't cleaning up their voter rolls and taking people off who've died and moved away.
100,000 people on the dead rolls?
It was a huge amount. And federal law, the National Voter Registration Act, that's the law everybody calls motor voter.
Right.
That actually requires states to maintain their voter rolls. And so Judicial Watch filed a great lawsuit under the NVRA to force Los Angeles to finally do what it should have been doing when it came to voter registration rolls.
So what happens with this lawsuit? Is it Heritage and Judicial?
No, it's just Judicial Watch.
Okay.
And Los Angeles finally agreed to settle the suit and take all these ineligible individuals off the voter rolls.
Okay.
So they were successful.
Okay, and how can you verify that?
Well, Judicial Watch has got a federal court order ordering Los Angeles to do this. So if they don't do it, they're going to be able to go back to court and try to get...
So can you come in and audit, or, I mean, how does that work? Because you're talking millions of voters, right?
Well, I think Judicial Watch's lawyers will keep a close eye on that to make sure it gets done.
Yeah, yeah. And so Southern California, generally speaking, across the board is a problem. Any other problem states in your mind? What did we just see with Florida, with the governor's race and the Senate race that went down to one county again? And I mean...
Well, Broward County, which is one of the worst counties in Florida, there's a lot of evidence that they have not been doing what they should, taking people who have died off the rolls, taking people who've moved out of state off the rolls, that they've just been ignoring their requirements to do that.
Yeah, yeah. All right, well, very good. And as far as what Heritage is doing right now, so you guys are on top of it. This is a big push for you right now? I mean, you're kind of right in the middle of this.
It is, and we're trying to do everything we can to make sure that every American who's eligible gets to vote, but that the vote is not stolen or diluted through fraud.
Well, that's definitely something that I think we all think is important. Unfortunately, I think the whole thing is so darn politicized today.
It is, and it shouldn't be.
Right. And so ID laws and issues like this as well. I mean, they're preventing people from, ID laws being implemented in certain states, which is insane to me. You needed an ID, the president speaking tomorrow or the next couple of days, you're going to have to use that to get in here. You can get on an airplane to come down. So I mean, is that something that you could see happening with a push with ID laws around the country, or is that being pushed?
States have been slowly putting those in, but it's mostly more conservative states. Other states, like New York, for example. New York's one of the biggest states where you don't need an ID to vote.
It's incredible.
Isn't it? It is incredible. Something as important as voting, and officials there think, well, you shouldn't have to show an ID.
Yeah. Hans, where can people find you?
At heritage.org, heritage.org.
Heritage.org. Okay, folks, definitely check out Heritage Foundation. They got great information here. And Hans von Spakovsky, I just want to make sure I'm saying the name correctly. Thank you so much for joining us. This is Dave Sussman with America's Voice News. We'll be right back.